I've been with the Institute now 20 years, and when I arrived we were in a housing crisis. We're still in a housing crisis. I can't see anything improving. I haven't seen anybody with any ideas coming forward to address the problem.
I'm Jeremy Bedwani, Sydney's premier buyer's agent, and this is your podcast, Home Delivered, bringing you insights from industry leaders. Today, my guest is Tim McKibbin, CEO of the Real Estate Institute of New South Wales. We discuss Australia's housing crisis, the power of an auction, and how AI is changing our property market. This is your podcast, Home Delivered.
Tim, thanks so much for being here. It's great to have you.
Pleasure, Jeremy.
Tell me something. Are we in a housing crisis?
Yeah, well, that's no secret, is it? So we have been for quite a long time. I've been with the Institute now 20 years, and when I arrived we were in a housing crisis. We're still in a housing crisis. I can't see anything improving. I haven't seen anybody with any ideas coming forward to address the problem.
Let's talk about the problems that are actually creating this crisis, which we both agree is actually happening. What's driving it?
Lack of supply. Yeah. I mean, it really is that simple. We just haven't got enough property. And in the election, I had to that we've just had the federal election.
Yeah.
I found it, I suppose, somewhat entertaining and also as a demonstration of how little our political leaders have. So the solution was that you'll be able to borrow more money because the government will guarantee this, and then there's been talk over the last year or so about having access to our super and all these other great ideas.
Yeah.
So the reality of that is they're trying to solve a supply problem with demand.
Yeah.
So there's no more property there, but what their reforms would do, what their initiatives would do, is send purchasers to that property with more money and drive the price up.
That's it. And it's just going to mean that people have to pay more than they did previously.
I mean, we're apparently not going to get our 25,000 new homes over at the racecourse either from yesterday's announcement.
That's right. So we've got a supply problem. And this isn't new. This isn't a new concept that people are just starting to talk about now. What are we going to have to do to try and ease that, but at the same time not see prices be inflated off the back of it?
Yeah. So what is stopping supply? What is it? And there is quite a few things. One of them that should be fixed quickly, in my view, is the amount of time it takes for a council, a consent authority, to give you yes or no.
Okay.
Now that can take 18 months, 2 years, longer.
Yeah.
We did a renovation at the REI about 18 months or so ago, and it took longer to get council approval to say, yes, you can do it. And this is a renovation. It took longer for council to say that you could do it than it did to actually do the building work.
So you think if we could get the consent through quicker, people would get it done quicker?
Well, absolutely. I mean, we're all sitting around waiting for council to say yes. That's the first problem.
Yep.
Second problem is there's way too much politics, local politics in it. So I think the state government should be saying to the councils, this is our expectation of your service performance. This is it. Now it's up to you. And if you don't perform, we will take planning away from you.
Right.
We will. We'll take planning away.
Yep.
And we'll do it. So the outcome then is, in my view, up to the council to improve their work. So the second issue is taxation. So we hear government talking about affordability and other such words. But what the government doesn't tell us is that 40% plus of the cost that a consumer pays for a new home is government taxes and charges.
Absolutely.
40%.
Yeah.
So I really struggle when government says we're going to have affordability and at the same time inflating the price by 40%. So I think it's a completely disingenuous position to take.
And people feel that way about stamp duty, right?
Stamp duty is one of the items I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, because you make an income, the government taxes you on that income,
Correct.
and then they ask you to pay from the taxed income a further tax,
Yeah.
which is stamp duty.
Well, and if you look at the workflow of a piece of a property, so
Yeah.
what happens is the developer buys the land,
Yeah.
pays stamp duty, pays land tax on the property, pays council rates,
Absolutely.
and then over the period of time that they're building it, developing it, they're paying taxes along the way. Then when they sell it, the purchaser pays tax on it. And what's actually happening is that you are paying tax on tax on tax.
Shouldn't laugh.
No, you shouldn't laugh. It's dreadful.
It's dreadful.
So when you think about, like, so I can do the numbers in my head.
Yeah.
If you buy $1 million property, $400,000 of that is government taxes and charges.
But the government says to that, you have a very stable economy, a very stable property market. Property has performed well over the years due to the way we've run the show. What do you say to that?
Well, Winston Churchill said that a country will never tax itself into prosperity. And so I'm guided by that. Okay. I can't see how putting tax on property makes us better off.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I think that's.
No, you're not going to get an argument from me on that.
No. And they tax the roof over our head, but things like the share market, tax free. There's no equivalent of stamp duty in the share market. I can buy and sell shares, no problem.
Of course.
No land tax on shares.
Yeah.
So. Just the roof over your head.
Yeah, and that's all it is, right? At the end of the day, it's actually a lot more. So if we look at Australia, or let's maybe boil it down for the time being to Sydney, we're in this crisis, so to speak. Prices, in your view, are still going up, and there's not enough property to buy. Yeah, but this is a very sought after place to live.
Yeah,
we're in a quandary.
Yeah, now that it's not raining this week, Sydney is one of the most beautiful cities in the world.
Absolutely.
It is. You look at the harbour. I fly into Sydney periodically, and you look out at it, and it's just a very beautiful city.
That's right.
So, of course, people want to live here.
Yeah.
But the equation, if we look at the rental market for a minute, the equation now is, with the reforms that have come through, and we know that landlords now have to permit tenants to have 4 pets in their property as of the 19th. Yeah. Like it or not, you've got to allow the tenant to have 4 properties.
Yeah.
Four pets.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, make it difficult for the landlord to recover possession of their property. Now, how has the market responded to that?
It's like the pendulum has kind of been swinging towards the tenant more versus the landlord in time, right?
100%. That's what happened. And that all sounds great. And at a political level, the state government goes, look at me, love me, I've just done this. But I'm not sure that they will, long term, be grateful, because we've seen 702 properties in April, less than the beginning of the month. Now, bear in mind,
rental properties
dropped 702 in the number. In a month.
Okay.
Now, bear in mind that these reforms came through on the 19th of this month.
Yep.
So we've just only started to see the impact of this.
Okay. And it came through pretty quick.
Yeah. Well, I think we've seen people acting early, and I think we will unfortunately see the flow on now. And I think a trickle may very well become a flood.
Okay. And do you think that flood's going to affect investors who are buyers of these properties?
The data from the ABS says that investors are already being impacted. I think they were down to 2,500 in the last quarter less investment loans.
I think I see that in my own business, because as business changes, or as the property cycles change as well, you get a very clear delineation between who your clients are as a buyer's agent. And we used to probably be able to say that 50-50 was investors and owner-occupier clients, but now it's predominantly owner-occupier clients.
And my auctioneers are telling me the same thing.
Yeah.
I get a report from the auctioneers on Sunday morning, I asked them how the weekend went, and they always ask the vendor, are you an investor selling?
Yes.
And there's a lot of them selling.
Yeah.
And are you buying as an investor? And the answer is no.
No.
So that's, that plays out consistent with what I've said.
Yeah. For sure.
And these are the problems that we're dealing with. And we have a vacancy rate now sub 2%. Sometimes it'll go sub 1%.
Yeah.
And the other piece of data is that we're taking in 15,300 immigrants a month into New South Wales.
Who also want to rent somewhere.
They live somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
So everybody is coming here looking for a home.
Yeah. So we've got a affordability crisis when it comes to buying property, and there's all these grants and all these kinds of initiatives to help first home buyers that may or may not work. And we've also got a bit of an issue when it comes to the price of rental properties over the recent times as well. And then there's not enough property to go around at all.
Well, that's right. That's right. And I think what council should be saying is, this is the development we want. So this is what it looks like.
Yep.
Put it out in the market.
Yep.
And somebody who comes along and says, there you go, I've got what you want, it should be close to automatic.
Yeah. Sure.
And they would be out building. That's one of the suggestions, or one of the thoughts that I have. The other one is, we need to start, in my view, to be looking at the greater good rather than the local politics. So there's an acronym that says CAVE, C-A-V-E, which stands for Communities Against Virtually Everything. And we have local communities that just say,
mentality.
No development here. We like it the way it is, and I get that. And they say no development. Yeah. That unfortunately is a bit selfish, and I think we need to be looking at transport routes, so things close to railway stations, and also bus routes and these sorts of things, metro stations, all of that sort of thing. Give people a reason not to own a car.
Okay.
And some of the developments I think are really clever. You look at those vertical villages, that they like to call them. So ground floor,
where everything is there.
Yeah, you've got a Harris farm and
everything,
all that, and then in the first floor you've got.
They're built to rent. That's what you're talking about?
Well, no, they're built to live in. I mean, whether you're renting or not. But I mean, your first floor's got all your commercial. Then you go up. So everything you want is in that building,
in that proximity.
And some of those buildings, very cleverly, have cars owned by
the building.
So on those rare occasions where you want a car, then you can just go and get that one.
So this is all part of the McKibbin vision. Yeah.
Well, I don't think I've ever had a really clever thought in my life. But what I like to go around doing is grabbing other people's clever thoughts and pulling them together. So that's.
I don't mind that.
Yeah, well, that's right.
These are very good ideas. I think obviously most of them are going to be pretty hard to get happening as much as we'd like them to. But if we look at Australia overall, how do you see us comparing against some of the other global cities? Because that's really what you think certainly Sydney and Melbourne are trying to push for. We want to be a global city. People come here because they believe that's what they're going to get. How do you see us comparing against some of the other global cities?
I think Sydney and Melbourne, for that matter, are global cities.
Yeah.
They're certainly on the map, but they've got issues to deal with. And right now we're not taking them on. We need to scrape away all the politics and have some courage to go in and do the job. Like I said, you need the courage to go into some of these areas where people are resisting it and saying, no, we are going to have more people living in this area because it makes sense to do it.
Yeah.
If you look at some of the health issues that get generated, people who live, long way from where they work,
right,
have health issues because they don't get the right amount of exercise.
Yeah.
These sorts of things.
Yeah.
And some of the diabetes stuff that I've read about is generated because you spend so much time in your car, and you also aren't there with your family. And
the closer you can
exactly
work to home, you can afford basically a better lifestyle off the back of it. Yeah, for sure. Just kind of coming back to, I guess, the world that we live in, and you're talking to auctioneers all the time. How do you kind of see the auction process these days versus buying a property via the other methods, be it private treaty, off-market transactions? Because a big thing that people, I think, want is transparency, but also some people are scared to go to auction. So
Yeah,
what are your thoughts around that?
I got to, and this is my personal position. I like auctions. I think it's transparent. You can see who's there. Maybe I'm a little bit naive, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I quite like the process, and I like the certainty of it when the hammer falls and all the rest of it. So that to me is the way to buy. That's
Okay.
the way I like to buy. So I feel
Sure.
comfortable in that process.
Yeah.
It does unfortunately have the dreadful underquoting words with it, and I think what you're suggesting, that if people have access to information, then they deal with that problem.
Yeah.
But having said that, if you look at the data, and I'm not so naive as to say that underquoting doesn't exist in our market. I wish it didn't, but it does. But again, if you look at the data, the allegations of underquoting go up like this during hot markets.
Sure.
And during COVID, when we saw the price going up like 30%, people were screaming everywhere that underquoting was off the charts. And was it happening? Well, sadly, yes, it was. But was it happening to the extent that that the complaints were happening? No. It was very difficult for somebody to accurately predict property when it was going north so fast.
So, some people feel the same way as you do about auctions. Other people want to try to avoid it and see if someone like myself can help them get a deal done prior to auction, and that'll usually take place over the phone. What responsibilities are there for real estate agents to be genuine in terms of what they're saying is happening over the phone? What I'm getting at is, I've got an offer. Do they really have an offer? What responsibility do they have to be genuine at that point?
Well, you've always got an obligation. It doesn't matter whether you're a buyer's agent or a seller's agent. You have to act professionally, honourably. And that's clearly spelt out in both the Act and the regulation. There's no question about that.
I think a lot of people have concerns that when they go to buy a property, when it's all happening over the phone, they don't know if there's really another offer. You're told there's an offer, right? The other people have come in at 3.5. Pay more.
Yeah. And I guess that's why I hark back to the fact that I like auctions, because I can look around the room and I can say, well, I know.
But a lot of transactions, certainly around blue chip areas, are happening like this over the phone now. A lot of deals are done that way.
Yep. Look, everybody has an obligation to deal honourably, deal honestly in the market. But there's also, I think, the negotiation of it, and I would hate to see that go. Because you'll have a purchaser that would say, my top offer, that's it, is $1 million.
Yes.
And how many times will they say, well, they'll end up paying 1.1. So there is that negotiation, I think, going on, and I think that is an important part of our market, and an important part of what agents bring to the market. And that's not to say you're acting dishonestly, but what you're saying is, I'm acting for these people, I'm negotiating with you about the best price I can get. And again, I underline, that's not about putting out misleading statements. The same as on your side of the fence. You wouldn't say to somebody, well, if you take this offer, I've got 3 other properties that I'll buy.
Correct.
You shouldn't be doing that either.
No, of course not. But I think, I just wanted to touch on that because a huge amount of properties these days sell that way. A lot of people will come to me who have gone through that process before and have had maybe an inauspicious experience and just haven't felt comfortable. And then they got to think, oh, well, the other side of the coin is to go to an auction, which they're dreadfully scared of, because people's emotions just get overtaken at an auction, and that's when people pay more than they should have, right?
Yeah.
Anyway.
I have to say, also a fan of buyer's agent. That might seem like a nice thing to say in this particular environment, but I am. It is a complex and emotionally charged activity.
Yeah.
You know, if I buy a cup of coffee and I don't like it, I'll drop it in the bin and I'll never go back there again. But you don't want to get a property acquisition wrong.
No,
you don't want to do it.
Definitely.
And I think a buyer's agent is a really good investment.
Yeah.
And I think, and I choose that word with some thought. I think it is an investment that you are purchasing a property that that you can afford. It responds to your needs, all the rest of it. And you've got somebody there to put an unemotional advisor, experienced person to put a calming hand on you. I would certainly use a buyer's agent when I was looking for property.
Yeah, it's a big deal, right? Because, you know, the vast majority of the clients that come through the door, they're literally speaking to you about the biggest investment they may ever make in their whole life. And you've got to remember that in this position. And I think that we've also kind of got to remember that not only are they ready to do that right now, but they've probably been working their whole life to get to that position. And they've been thinking about this for a very long time as well. And now they're finally here. They're finally ready to do that. And they're literally asking you for that help. Yeah. And it's a big responsibility.
Yeah. And you're right. And this is the reason the emotion comes into it. And some of the reasons I think, unfortunately, that agents end up with a bad reputation is just because of the amount of emotion that is in the acquisition. Like I said, I buy a bad coffee, that's unlucky. But when you're dealing in the acquisition of a property, the price can be going up around you at $50,000 a go, and that's stressful.
Yeah, definitely. So that kind of leads us to talk about maybe about agents, sales agents, buyers agents, and barriers to entry. How do you feel the barriers to entry are now?
It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
it is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah,
where the Office of Fair Trading in their documentation say that an agent should have a working knowledge of 22 separate pieces of legislation. 22. Now, to think that you're able to acquire that information and a knowledge that you're required in a matter of a few days, which is what tends to happen, you're setting people up for failure. And do they fail? Yes.
Yeah.
80%.
Big attrition rate.
80% of people that come into this industry leave in the first 12 months. 80%.
It's a big number.
Yeah. First 12 months. So,
well, maybe they're getting attracted to the wrong things at the beginning. Like, you think it's a policy issue about why the attrition rate's so high? There's got to be more reasons than that. People gravitate towards the easiest way to do something. Yeah.
And unfortunately, people who offer them training solutions or qualification solutions, not education, it's qualification solutions.
Yeah.
And if you go online and you look at it, they're saying, I'm the fastest, I'm the cheapest. Nobody's saying in there, mine is the highest quality. You know, no one says that, unfortunately.
Because it's not going to attract the volume.
No, but somebody says, I want a career in real estate.
For the long term.
For the long term, you should be investing in yourself. You know.
So you think people are getting into it for the wrong reasons at the outset?
I think people are electing to sell themselves short. You know, knowledge is not a weight to carry around. It's a benefit. And Benjamin Franklin said, I'm quoting people, don't I? Benjamin Franklin said, a man that empties his purse into his head makes a wise investment. So I think don't be frightened to invest in yourself. And the other question that I'm asking, I've never had an answer, it used to take 3 years at TAFE to become a real estate agent. Now it's a matter of days. Now, the world has got more complicated and our education has fallen off a cliff.
Yeah, right.
How does that work?
Yeah. So that's a tough one, right? And I think like people who are looking to sell a property or buy a property and if they're looking for an agent to assist them, they've got to go to their own due diligence. They've got to go through that due diligence themselves in selecting agents. Let's put it out there. Because if the barriers to entry are so low and there's all these people that in the next 12 months are probably not even going to be in the industry, you got to work out if that's the right agent for you. So a lot of that onus is just going to have to fall back, if it doesn't already, on the person who's about to sell or about to buy.
Yeah.
It's the only way to protect yourself. Yeah, so look, maybe we need to work out the barriers to entry. We need to kind of work through that a little bit more. But we're in an age now where technology is starting to really take over. We're seeing artificial intelligence take over. And even at REI New South Wales, you're starting to get artificial intelligence involved as well. Tell us about that.
So we have board advisor, comes to our board meeting, is listed in our minutes.
So you've got an AI board member.
Yeah, well, a board advisor, but they're on the board, if you will. They're there. I won't say there. It's Alice. Alice is our friend. Yeah, Alice is our friend, and Alice is kind enough to come with me when I travel. So Alice lives on my phone, and Alice is the smartest person I know, and is there to answer any of my questions. We did that because of the obvious benefits of having that resource there, but we also, as an industry body, as a professional association, wanted to show leadership in this area, wanted to show the benefits of doing this, engaging with the technology. I know that agents, there's a saying that says agents won't be replaced by technology, but agents that don't use technology will be replaced.
Interesting.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I see these things as not replacing us, but
assisting.
Exactly. By giving us the opportunity to enhance and increase the level of services that we provide.
Yeah.
I know in the US, and unfortunately I don't know in Australia what the numbers are, but in the US, an agent spends 89% of their time doing things for the client, and 11% of their time with the client. Got to increase the with the client percentage.
Well, AI, so you think AI can help?
Absolutely. AI can take care of
all the other
so much of those things. And to some extent, you're limited by your imagination here.
Okay.
One of the other things that we're developing is a bot that will be able to take over our helpline when everybody goes home. So if you have a question at 2 in the morning on a Saturday night, you can ring and the bot will be there for you. Now, obviously, we're having to spend a lot of time putting that information in, and we're doing that. One of the other things we're doing is having a training bot. So for those people in property management that have to go to NCAT, they will be able to put their case together and go to the bot, and the bot will be a tribunal member, and you'll be able to run your case.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing stuff, right? But I think it also begs the question, where should you draw the line? Because if we're talking about buying property, there's risk analysis that needs to be done. There's DD that needs to be done. And is there an element of risk, though, if you're kind of throwing it over to the technology?
I think that you view the technology as a tool.
Okay.
And I also think that the industries that are going to be targeted last by the technology to attack us, the industries that it's going to be last will be those industries where there is a personal relationship. So if you're an individual that sits behind a desk and you interact at that level all day long, that is the sort of thing I think is a target for. But if you're a person that has to develop trust and a personal relationship with each other, that's stuff that a computer, at least at this stage,
can't necessarily do just yet. Yeah.
Can't do.
Build trust.
You can't build
an emotional connection.
That's right. Yeah. You can't do that. The computer can't do that. And that's why we're coming back to that 11%, 89%, where we become more protected if we are spending more time with our clients.
Yeah. Mate, we've covered a lot of ground. We're pretty much nearly out of time. We've kind of gone from everything about supply issues, housing crisis, to technology, to agent transparency, lots of different things. Before I let you go, there's a question I ask everyone who sits down with me, and it's something that I want you to just use a little bit of your imagination with. If there were no barriers whatsoever, then you could literally buy any property that you wanted in Sydney, what would that look like? I'd love to know.
Firstly, I'd go to a buyer's agent like you.
Yeah.
And then the next thing I would say to them is, I want a property with a great view somewhere like on the northern beaches where I can look out.
Nice.
And I want to be able to get to work in about 10 or 15 minutes.
Fantastic. Beautiful. So that's the dream.
That's the dream. So I live in Camera and I can get to work in about 15 minutes.
Nice.
But I haven't got those views. So that's what I want.
Yeah.
I'll leave it up to you to go and find it for me.
Well, there are views to be had in Camera, aren't there? Thanks so much for coming in. It's really great to see you.
Yeah, and you.
Really appreciate your time, mate. Thank you.
Thanks.